Hello, Michael.
Hello, dear heart. And anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to observe Miss Nini, as Arya calls her, as her genius mind puts together this computer stuff. I mean, thank you to Susan for all her support and assistance, and you're the impetus behind getting all. I mean, I don't know. Do you know how many pages we've got now? I know it's over 20,000, but do you know how many pages are on the site?
I don't know, but I know when we switched it over, I spent 2 weeks with Susan Giles down in Florida learning how to do the new website, because we've changed from an HTML to a PHP and now to a WordPress, and it's like totally different styles every time we've shifted the website. And I was very resistant in going to WordPress, but it's definitely been easier, so I am thankful that she continued and was persistent. And she does have the shop complete, and that is really cool. Even if you're not going to buy something, which we would love for you to buy something, go out and look at the shop and look how different it looks. And just the way that she has laid it out is fabulous, and she has helped me so much in getting that lined up. So yes, and thank you for saying thank you, Michael.
Thank you for saying thank you for me saying thank you. Okay, you going to go again?
No.
Anyway, it's awesome to watch you do it. And, you know, when a phone problem comes up or a computer problem comes up, I just hand it to Jeannie because her mind is just so amazing in that direction, and so many others. And as she said, you know, if you go look at the shop and decide to buy something, that would be appreciated. You know, since we've not been on the road, it has created a tumble in cash flow, and we keep churning out as much as we can to support and expand and make it available on a wider and wider scale. When we do things like the podcasts that we do and such, you know, there generally isn't any remuneration for that. And basically, you know, just keeping up, you know, a 20,000 page website, and the just one after another takes. I've been thinking about, you know, maybe setting up a Patreon account. I've been hearing about that, don't know much about it. If anybody's an expert at that, I'd love to have some input. But we're getting to the point where we just got to find some ways to monetize the stuff we've been giving away. You know, I mean, we want to make it. We actually just took today and put one more product that used to be a paid product on YouTube this afternoon at 3:30 Eastern Time, England time. We'll be doing the Hear My Voice Book Club, and we're going to do a Q&A session on forgiveness. So if anyone has anything you'd like to know about that, I'm sure Jeannie's already put the links in today's notes, and it's on the events page, so you can click on that and listen in at 3:30. And Yinka was asking if we would do a meditation, and I told her about this one, and it's been, you know, over the years. I mean, it's something I did, I don't know, almost 40 years ago. I was back when I had a medical practice in Atlanta, and, you know, my focus was more around health as opposed to the forgiveness and expanding in that direction, which of course is the primo way to healing. But it was actually I had an office in Atlanta, Buckhead, and then moved to North Georgia. That meditation, Wellness to Stillness, which you can go to YouTube now and pick it up, was something that I did way back then. And in moving to North Georgia and then moving to Florida, that master got set aside and kind of lost in the shuffle. I don't even remember now how many years. It was several years later that I got a call from a guy in Canada in a crisis. He's like, I need a copy of that tape, that Wellness to Stillness tape. It's like, oh, geez. We don't make that anymore. Oh, you got to get me one. That's my healthcare plan. When I get sick, I lay down, I listen to that video, and I'm up and on go again. And I just wore one out. I've actually had two of them. He said, I've just worn it out, and I've got to have one. So went looking, finally found it, and remastered it. The voice doesn't sound much like me today. Jeannie was saying as she was setting it up to master it for YouTube. but it's a powerful progressive relaxation, and then looking at normalizing the control centers of the energy system and stepping back to health. So that's a product that was in our sales catalog until today, and now you can go to YouTube and download it or give it a listen. And over the years, I've had many healthcare practitioners that would buy that when it was a CD, would buy it in bulk to make it available to their I prefer to say clients, many say patients, but it's a powerful. If you base it on, you think about the Aramaic in the beginning was the mind energy, not the word, but the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. It's a powerful collection of mind energy for helping to realign this energy system that we call a body that really isn't a body. One of the formal bases of this work is Albert Einstein's genius mind, where he says, quote, "On such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter." Now, you've heard me talk about one of the things that I've learned from Arya, that my job as her grandfather is to be, in my essence, to be the space of love for her continuously, whatever she does. Even if she violates one of my goals and brings up something other than love, and I've had a few of those things. As a kid, it was rough. A lot of sickness and some. Well, we won't talk about that right now. But anyway, so I've realized that my job is, and this is kind of the principle on which it's based, and it's a principle on which this Wellness Through Stillness CD is based, and that is that my job is to continue to be in contact with and connected to and functioning out of the truth of who I am, so that I can see, contact, and connect with the truth of who she is, that is not yet perhaps fully manifest in her form. She's got a genetic history like all of us, unresolved issues. Those sorts of things happen to everybody. But those things don't touch the truth of who we are as human beings. They touch our physiology. And what I've learned from Arya is I've realized that my job is to stay connected to that and process myself in a hurry if something like less than that comes up, so that I am that for her, so that I can literally resonate with who she is. That line in the worksheet that says, "When I choose love, it wakes up to love in everyone." It's a principle behind that. So my real task, and our task with each other and with our children especially, is to be the resonance that perhaps when there's something in the body-mind unit that goes off on a tangent, goes off into some form of hostility or fear, that by holding to that space of active love, I can strengthen her essence. And in strengthening, help to pull her essence, love, the truth of her being, into this form. So that resonance principle is a key. You've heard me talk about the experience back 35 or so years ago. I've been talking about it probably for 5 years, so it's probably more like 40 years ago. But I had a fairly large group at Heartland. We had an intensive. I think it was pre-Heartland. No, so it would have been within the last 32 or 33 years, because it was at Heartland. We had a group of about maybe 50 people there, and there was someone who had a really dramatic set of symptoms going on. And we're in a process. I don't even know whether we were doing a worksheet or whether we were doing a still points. I don't even remember what we were doing now. But this individual, out of a group of about 50 people, had this mega shift to where they just everything changed in that instant. And I'm left kind of bewildered, wondering what's going on. What's the core? What's the key to healing? Why did this person get this kind of shift? And, nobody else in the room seemed particularly affected. Everybody got the energy shift and the sweetness of it. But, this one person made that major move. And I'm contemplating, asking, show me, what's this about, this healing thing? And what I was shown clearly was that in order for healing to occur, two things have to happen. One, love has to be conscious, active, and present in the space. And I'm not talking about a word called love or trying to experience love through a word. I'm not talking about sexual athletics. I'm not talking about put your head on the chopping block and prove you love somebody by letting them abuse you. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the actual factual presence of a human life, of this state of being. And so that was the first factor for healing to occur, that love needs to be present. And, realizing, and that's the idea in the worksheet, when I choose love, it wakes up to love in everyone, that we can be that support for each other. We can help to strengthen and resonate that in each other so that we have support for manifesting the truth of who we are, for bringing about the truth of who we are into this form. That's the principle by which that woman who had the issue of blood, it's pretty severe, 12 years it's been going on. And she's in the throng. I don't know how many people are in the crowd. Might have been 50 like that intensive. I don't know. Throng might have been 5,000. But she knew that if she could touch the hem of his garment, she would heal. And this is a pretty serious disease. I mean, this woman, in that culture in particular, her whole function as a woman, maybe a little crazy, but her whole function is, to feed her family. And she can't go in the kitchen because of her period. She's unclean. 12 years. But she knows if she can touch the hem of his garment. Does that mean she's got to go touch a piece of cloth? And let's not be silly about it. That's not what it means. It means that her field, her state of being, my offering would be that she was not strengthened enough yet in her being to come into her form powerfully enough to overcome whatever the energetic pattern was that was creating the disease. She needed support. In the scriptures, that would be referred to as touching the hem of his garment. And you'll notice when they want to put the healing of her form onto him, he says, no, it was her. It was your work, your faith that made you whole. So she reached out to touch someone. It's a cool idea out there in the culture. To connect in love and be strengthened as the presence of love in her own form and throw off the energy of the disease that was going on in her body. And we can do that for each other. So what I was showing is two things have to happen. That love has to be present. That state of being has to be active in us, conscious, active, and present. And at the same time, the veil of the temple, the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious, needs to open. And whatever the dis-ease energy is, whatever is creating the distortion, and there's only one disease, and that's an energy that doesn't belong in the system. Remember, in the Aramaic, the word sin is an archery term, means you miss the target. So whatever the sin is, whatever the energy is that's creating the distortion in tissue, and there's only one, and that's just a quality of energy that doesn't belong. And it doesn't matter where it is, if that energy is stored. Remember, the mind functions through every cell in the structure. If that energy is stored in the big toe, then that person's going to have the big toe disease. If it's stored in the kneecap, it's going to have the kneecap disease. If it's stored in the lung, the liver, the heart, or the brain, it's going to have the lung, the liver, the heart, or the brain. It's all the same disease, and it's all the same principle of healing. If that can be withdrawn, if that can be removed or accessed and taken out of the cell that it's in. When mind energy becomes flesh, you think a thought becomes a neuropeptide. Neuropeptide locks into the cell and inserts itself in the cell, and it's literally chemistry in the cell. Reverse that process. Pull that neuropeptide out of the cell. That which is less than love comes out of hiding in the presence of love, and it dissolves. That's called healing. That's called forgiveness. The removal of what never belonged. So recognizing that that's the key to the whole process, cultivating your relationship, taking the time to spend time with you as active present love is really an important thing to do. And to capture those energetic patterns to create the space that's safe enough. So with Arya, I realized my job is to be that space with her. And the amazing, about a week or so ago, she fell and hurt her neck. She's walking around with her hand on her neck and it's hurting. So I'm going to adjust your neck, sweetie. What does that mean? Here, let me show you. And I sit her down and adjust her neck, and she just adjusts so easy. It's just like click, 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 click down her neck. And it was like a volcano erupted. I mean, literally, I could almost see the emotional energy as I did that. And I mean, it was just the energy that flowed from her, the instant that her little neck moved, was just like this volcano of emotion. She just broke into tears. It was just like a wail. And then she kind of stood up and felt her neck and realized, and it just turned into raucous laughter. She was just like laughing. But as soon as that energy release occurred, as soon as the block that was in her physiology from having fallen was moved, just this whole volcanic release of emotion came. Tears, and then laughter. And when we align the structure in the system, and that Wellness Through Stillness CD is about aligning each of the energy centers for health. And each of the energy centers is run and controlled by mind energy. So the 20 minutes goes into relaxation and balancing glandular, limited nerve, digestive, muscular, circulatory systems, regenerative. So that's kind of what that's all about. You might want to take the time to do that. And beyond that, if you choose to get something out of the catalog, that'd be awesome. And or if you choose to support, and or if you don't, that's great too. Pass it on at least. Make it available to somebody else. And if you have any ideas on how we can monetize what we're doing, especially since we're not on the road traveling 30 weeks of the year, which is what we did for 40 years, we'd love to hear from you and or any support you choose to offer. So, Jeannie, you opened up a file for me when you made that comment. Have we got anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it is all quiet. I did have an email with a question, but it was on the Avison. I don't know if we want to do that, and I can just send them the link to the radio show.
Go for it.
Okay. So they're asking, does the Avison work for long-term healing as well as temporary relief? Is the increased circulation helping the body to do its own healing, or is it more of a tool to bring some blood flow and thus pain relief in the moment?
Well, it does both. My experience is it does both. The first time, when I heard about the Avison, I have a friend who introduced him, Patrick. You've heard him on the show. He was on it just the other day. And Patrick is in his mid-70s and has or had diabetes. I don't know if he'd be categorized as having diabetes anymore, but it was pretty severe, and he had neuropathy with a lot of pain in his feet. And Patrick told me about it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, Patrick. Cool. I'm glad you're doing that. And after a few weeks, he's starting to tell me what's going on with his feet. And, he would be able to get up in the morning, normally with neuropathy because of the diabetes, and he would be able to work for 2 hours. And then he'd be in such excruciating pain in his feet that he'd have to go put his feet up. Within about 5 or 6 weeks, and I may have the time frame off, I'm not sure exactly, but it was a relatively short time. Patrick's telling me about, I'm doing this machine a couple times a day, and I'm able to work for 5 hours a day now. And, I get up and I can do 5 hours. I was limited to before, and I don't have excruciating pain at the end of 5 hours. He said, I have aching in my feet, but, I can still walk around and that sort of thing. And now Patrick does 10 and 12-hour days. So it does both. So the idea, what happens with the Avison is when you heat the blood, there are 40 to 60 billion capillaries, depending whose estimate you take, miles, 100,000 or so miles of blood vessels in that structure. And at the head of each capillary, those 40 to 60 billion capillaries, there's a set of muscle fibers that if we're in fear, if we go into sympathetic dominance, tighten, restrict, and stop blood flow into the capillary. And that's so that, in fear, there was a time when it meant survival and injury, and blood flow was cut off, periphery circulation especially, and, like diabetes creates periphery circulation problems, tingling hands and feet, numbness, dysfunction, pain, eyes, their periphery. And so it's a survival mechanism. Sympathetic dominance, it's a great thing. Fear, flight, fright, freeze, or fawning are all powerful ways to survive. And, if it was meant to function that if you were in the jungle and a lion's chasing you, it's going to cut blood flow to the higher functions of the brain because you don't have to solve the latest calculus problem if a lion's chasing you. It's going to cut blood flows, let's say, to the regenerative organs. You don't have to think about conceiving a baby or, creating sperm or cycling eggs. If a lion's chasing you, you don't have to think about generating or creating red blood cells. You don't need to think about digestion. You don't need to think about elimination. So blood flow is cut off to all of those functions in that survival mode, sympathetic dominance. But it's designed, and it's a wonderful mechanism. It's designed to shunt that blood to the larger blood vessels, so that, to the larger muscles, arms, legs, fight, run, and to the lungs to be able to take in more oxygen, to be able to supply that extra blood flow for a real sprint of energy. And then 5 minutes later, you either are eaten by the tiger or you got away and you're rocking and you move back into what's called parasympathetic dominance, which is rest, digest, regeneration, healing, wholeness, higher brain function. So in its initial phases, what it does is it pours warm blood over those muscle fibers, which softens them, and they start to open and allow circulation to go in. Now, if somebody's lived in chronic either hostility or fear, which basically is sympathetic dominance, then those muscle fibers are not only, kind of in an habitual locked position. If you've ever played the parlor game of grabbing a broomstick and tightening your hand around as tight as you can, and then try to open your fingers, they don't open very well. Well, if you think of someone who's been in chronic sympathetic dominance, days, weeks, months, years, decades, then those muscles are locked up and locked in. And when they're locked in, where there's supposed to be a flow of blood, of course, you can easily imagine that a river, nice, cool, clean, clear water flowing through this river, and a tree falls in it and blocks the river up, dams it up, then all of a sudden you've got leaves and debris and sticks and branches coming downstream that otherwise would just pass by and be gone. What do? They accumulate around the leaves and the branches of the tree. You get muck starting to gather, and you get things living there that couldn't live in a flowing river. Well, it's an exact duplicate in the structure. If those muscle fibers are chronically locked up, then there's congestion that builds. There are organisms that start to live there that don't belong. It's called congestion. And in the system of medicine I'm trained in, the whole root of disease is congestion. So in the short term, it starts to open those muscle fibers, which takes oxygen nutrition into the cell. According to at least one theory, a 5% lack of oxygen means excruciating pain in the cell. So if you can just start to get a little bit of blood flow into that cell that's hurting, you're going to get temporary relief. Over the long term, what happens is that increased flow over time is going to, as you could imagine, if you went in and you took the tree that's blocking the stream and you started pulling the branches out that were blocking the way. Well, you get one branch, you get two, you get three, and geez, it's not quite so much of a swamp anymore. It's starting to flow a little bit. As it flows a little bit, things start to get cleaned up. Oh, I can see another couple of branches. Oh, there's another block in there. Oh, there's one that must have come downstream a long time ago. It's really locked in there under the mud. And as each one's pulled out, then what happens is you start to get a more significant flow, which cleans out the gunk. And you're back to that nice, clean, clear, flowing river. So my offering would be with Patrick, within a matter of just weeks, his feet were at the point where he could work for 5 hours instead of 2. In a matter of a year and a half, he can do 12 or 14 hours, and he has no problem with his feet whatsoever. So it has both the short-term and the long-term impact, and my take is because of what it cleans out of the system. So that's one of the primary mechanisms that's going on there. Does that get to the questions, Jeannie?
I believe it did, and I will send her a note and tell her to listen to the show. I'll download and send her the link. You do have a hand up.
Cool.
Now.
Oh, great. Let's say hello. And if there are any other questions about it,
I believe it's Miss Linda.
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Welcome, young lady.
541.
Welcome. And how are you this fine day? It sounds like you're rocking again.
We are. Was out working in the garden. It was 33 degrees this morning, and we're creating this new indigenous species, native species garden, and we've started by putting cardboard over it to, get the grass to transform into soil and nutrients for the threatened species plants that we're planning on putting there. And we had a good windstorm last night, so I was out replacing some of the cardboard and locking it down so that this area starts to compost the soil and the grass that's underneath it. So it's a little chilly this morning, and I got a good bit of breathing in with being up on the side of the hill, and it was icy, so I did a little roll down the hill and adjusted my spine. So it was a good morning.
Yeah, well, you must have bare ground then.
Well, no, the area, we're doing an area of starting out with about 25 by 100 feet, and we've got cardboard over it all. So I was on the cardboard, and we had some sleet last night, so it was ice and snow.
Right, you don't have any snow on the ground, was what I was referring to.
There was a little bit on top of this cardboard, and that's what had me take my little slide and tumble.
Okay.
But it was a good one.
We still got it. Yeah, we still got probably at least 8 inches to a foot of snow on the ground.
Oh, so really? Oh, my goodness. Bless your heart.
Yeah. We're not even going to be able to get into our garden until April. Yeah. So I'm sitting here waiting impatiently for April. Actually, I'm not waiting impatiently, but I would love to be able to garden 12 months out of the year if I had the opportunity. Yeah,
I hear you.
I love it. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to share with you, when you were talking about Arya Rain, excuse me, I have a froggy in my throat. When you were talking about Arya Rain and being the supportive love for her, the unconditional love and the space of love for her, I had done a worksheet with Dr. Tim a few days ago about my brother and his illnesses and how I was suffering, or I was feeling such an intense, overwhelming loss, imminent loss. And I realized today that he actually was my substitute, probably more than any other person, or is at the moment, my substitute for the Creator, because I had disconnected
being the space.
When I was very little. Yeah, being the space for the Creator. Because we can have all kinds of theological arguments and other differing points of view. He used to call himself Crusader Rabbit, and he used to call me Gandhi, and it's just there's such a love at the base of it that other people don't see. They think we're arguing, because usually it takes about 2 or 3 days for us to realize, oh, we're saying the same words and speaking a different language. And so that works out. And then when you mentioned about the lady with the issue of blood, the woman with the issue of blood in the Bible, and you were saying that she didn't have the strength within herself yet to connect directly to Creator and have that healing. So she needed to bathe basically in the energy of Yeshua. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, that for me signaled just this morning while I was listening to you, that signaled for me that I need to be gentle with myself.
It's really important.
So, yeah.
And, you know, a point that you bring to mind as you say that I think is important in the conversation we've been doing so far, and that is that when something in my world resonates, that which is based in hostility and fear in me,
right,
on a level that's stronger than my ability to stay connected to love, then I tend to lose my identification with myself as love and buy into this false construct in my mind that I call self, the self that Yeshua said in order for us to live we need to die, that self that, you know, ultimately needs to go. And the fact that we can simply hold that space for each other, you know, if let's say, you know, if we put it, I like to do meters, if we put it in a point system, and let's say being has experienced at the level 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, and the non-being hostility and fear-based mind is running at a 7, 3 isn't likely going to overpower that 7 that's moving in physiology. And each time we forgive, you know, the idea and why one's going to have to return to and do, you know, essentially the same forgiveness work over and over and over again is because, you know, the first time I get into that level 7 issue, I might just get rid of 0.01% of it. And the second time I might get rid of 0.03% of it. And the third time I might get rid of 0.03 again and 03 again and then 05 and then 07. But over time, and that time might be days, weeks, months, or years, and I'm saying that from personal experience, recognizing in my own process, I have lots of things that I wish had been gone from my life a long time ago. But I realized that they were stronger than I was able to process out in any given moment. But over time, each time I do a worksheet, it's like I'm weakening that level 7 intensity in brain cells, moving it down to a 6, to a 5, to a 4. If I'm cultivating my relationship with myself as love, with the Creator as love, then I'm strengthening that so my level 4 goes to level 5, level 6, and when those two pass, then I'm more empowered to be able to process myself. But until then, I need help. And I need to continue to do the forgiveness work so that I continue to weaken the impetus or the intensity, the volume of the noise based in hostility or fear that's at the root of any of my diseases.
That's really, really interesting. So basically, your feelings meter, or what Magda calls the joy meter, which would be the opposite of the feeling meter of the fear or hostility. And that is, it's when those two numbers from beginning to bottom, beginning and ending, when they continue to, the gap continues to narrow more and more and more. And at some point when you're doing your worksheets, you realize that, oh, now I'm strong enough that I can really address these really strong issues. What happened to me last night when I was doing another worksheet on my brother was when I finished the worksheet, I actually felt worse than when I started it. I mean,
yes,
I just
that often happens.
Yeah.
And when we uncover what's hidden, and of course, the gift you can give to your brother is to come to him as the strength and space of love rather than come to him as suffering or trauma, because you haven't resolved in you what he's resonating in you by his condition. The person who's in illness, or, the person who's, going through the loss of a loved one, are we more fit to serve them when we go in with our own suffering and pain and go, oh, look, I have the same pain, let's suffer together? He is, billion-dollar industry
Right.
and sympathy cards. Or am I
Right.
a better gift to go into that, situation as active present love, and I'm just here to hold the space. I'm here to be the presence of love, to help you to move out whatever it is you're ready to move out, if you're ready to move something out, and to just be with you in that space.
Yes, and what's interesting is when I woke up this morning, Larry and I had a talk, and I'm beginning to see him in a totally different light than I've seen him in the past. And it's really, I'm appreciating him so much more, and actually being
Nice.
In a space within myself where I can validate his feelings as honorable, no matter what they are, that they're his feelings. And it's really difficult for me to validate anger feelings. It's much easier for me to validate fear feelings, because that was my drug of choice. As I mentioned to you,
Right.
they're both adrenaline-based, so I
Right.
just use fear as my drug. And then I squished down. I squished down the spring of my hostility, and now that hostility is coming out in all kinds of colors. And
Opportunities.
so there was like a healing process that must have taken place during the night, because Larry said when he came out that I looked like the most lost child in the universe. Which I probably was while I was doing the worksheet. The confusion, the fear, all of this, the grief, the loss.
Symptoms of healing. Yes.
Yeah. And so the release that you were talking about, little Arya's release, I thought that's basically what happened. I used to say joy was missing in my basket when I came down. Well, now I know I dropped it out when I disconnected, and now to learn the distinction between when I actually feel joy and my heart expands and when I'm being the jester, when I'm being the funny person, because
Right.
I need someone to agree with me, or
As a defense.
because I like being a clown, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a clown.
Yeah.
If I can serve a function, that clownness has to come from my joy, however, not my pain, and not my trying to fix everybody and keep
Right.
all of us from killing ourselves or each other, So,
And yet, at the same time, Celinda, as you say that, one of the reasons why a lot of people create disease and leave their bodies is because there's no place for them to land. I think, over the years of working with alcohol and drug addicts, what I've noticed is that they're some of the sweetest people, but there was nowhere for them to land.
That's right.
And their alcohol and drug addiction was a way to anesthetize against the pain of not being received. So just being the space that you're talking about with your brother and being able to receive him, receiving energy is a powerful energy dynamic, and just being able to receive him on a new level could make the difference between whether he decides to stay or go.
And that's Dr. Tim has very gently encouraged me to look at my preaching aspect, my teaching, preaching, getting lost in my brain, and not really making the connection, not understanding when I passed over sharing into preaching, that I had to have people see it my way. And maybe it was so I could feel understood. I can see now that ground of being. Well, I say that for me, there is a vast difference between information and understanding. And like my two Bible verses that I love the most are be still and know. And knowing for me is information and experience, left brain kind of processing. And then the other one is above all else, get the understanding. And it's very interesting. They both come from the Old Testament, don't they? How sweet
no, they were
is
struggling
that?
with it. They were trying to understand it.
Yeah, they were. And so now I call my understanding that space you're talking about, that firm terra firma, or whatever it's called, that firm ground.
Solid earth.
Feet, solid earth, yeah. And the space to breathe and to be, and the validation of my perspective as being valid, even if I don't agree with it or someone else doesn't agree with it. It is where I'm standing in the moment. Yeah. So I really appreciate what you and Jeannie have said this morning. And
cool.
so our
and also another
Jesus protect us until we're ready to let them go.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility? Yeah.
Say it again.
And remember, our diseases actually, we are our protection until we're ready to let them go. We've got enough space, we've got enough breath, we've got enough validation from something or someone, and
right.
on most ourselves when we get that powerful. So to have to get rid of my diseases even. I have to get rid of this because I'm not perfect. If I have all
called
this,
forgiveness.
Right. One other
forgiveness.
thing I think I mentioned to you that my drug of choice was food, bulimia. I think I mentioned that to you, right? 23 years as a bulimic. Yeah. And so I look at all of that and I realize now that hate I felt back then was so intense, self-hatred that I couldn't. And going through the 12-step program, it's really given me a lot of compassion for people who are drug addicts. A lot of compassion, not mercy, not saying, "Oh, you poor little thing," It's compassion of just, walking beside them and saying, "Hey, I got my issues just like you," Yeah.
Right.
So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, another point, and thank you. So a lot of good points raised, but another thought that comes is to recognize that when I'm standing on my terra firma, I may be standing on my disease and trying to claim it. I remember, what is it, Richard Bach that used to say, or has in one of his books, argue for your limitations and surely they're yours.
And they're yours.
And so,
right, I love that book.
And so the willingness to think I'm on terra firma, I'm on solid ground, but to recognize when it's not, and somebody might call me on it, and rather than, my habit mind, my non-being mind says I have to protect this terra firma because it's my terra firma, and it's my disease I'm protecting. It's a good idea once, to be able to at least receive the feedback and go, oh, maybe I should question this terra firma, and maybe I'm protecting my disease and I could be letting it go right now instead of, getting into some sort of a posture where I'm restricting my breath, tightening my physiology, and defending my space. Because truth doesn't need any defense.
Right, and that goes for my beliefs and my perceptions and my thoughts and everything else, not just my diseases, because the diseases arise out of those anyway. And I don't have to agree in the moment, but what I'm finding is that now I'm being able to listen a little more and say, thank you for that input, and I will make sure that I look at it, and it might go on the shelf at the moment, but I really appreciate all that information. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important part of communication, being able to receive information.
Yeah, and no wonder I can't communicate well or listen well It's like my eyes and my ears, or issues I have with my eyes and my ears. Duh. And duh in love, it's really a no-brainer if I really sat down. The one other thought I had to share with you was about terra firma, and that is, I have been deathly afraid. I have not deathly afraid. I have been afraid of water all my life. So the mere fact that I was able to get on a 30-foot sailboat and cross the ocean with Larry and a crew of 2.
That's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. It was like, oh, my God, the denizens of the deep, and how often water has been a metaphor for our emotions. And all of the predators in my water, fear of predators, stingrays and sharks and poisonous snakes and seagoing crocodiles and you name it, and including tankers that almost, including tankers
I
that
learned
almost cut our boat in half. Yeah, all of those things.
Back when my children were small, they were maybe 3.5 and 5, and we arrived in Fort Lauderdale, and it was July 4th. And we had a friend who had a concrete bottom boat. And he said, hey, why don't you guys come with us? They'd just been in one of our classes. We just connected with them. He said, why don't you come with us? And, we're going to go out off the beach in Fort Lauderdale and watch the fireworks. So, that sounds like fun. So off we go. And the fireworks are over, and we're coming back in, and we're following some other boats. And a boat goes a particular path, and this fellow is a fairly experienced captain, follows the path, because this boat's obviously going there, it's safe. And all of a sudden, we're hitting bottom, rock bottom, with a concrete-based boat, sailboat. And we watched the boat that he was following, which was not, I guess, made of concrete, because it literally broke up. I mean, we're only a couple hundred feet from shore, but it literally broke up and, landed on shore in pieces. And we were stuck there for about, 8 or 9 hours. And the way we finally got off was each time a wave came in, we took the dinghy, went out and set an anchor. And every time that a wave would come in and raise the boat off the rocks, we'd pull it out a few inches and crash onto the rocks, And we did that for hours. And we had called the Coast Guard because we had 2 little kids on the boat. And the Coast Guard said, we're not going through near there. We had a boat break up there just a few weeks ago. You're on your own. So I gained a whole lot of respect for the ocean that time, the power that's there, and the open ocean, a whole other level for sure.
Oh, yeah. And just like, so there are denizens of the deep in our emotional system, and we need to avoid them if we're not ready to deal with them, because they're not going to show up unless we call them to us out of negativity, out of fear or hostility, or until we're ready to deal with them. And we need each other.
Well, actually, if they're in there, we're calling for it continuously. Whether we're ready or not is kind of irrelevant. If the energy pattern is there, then there is an energy wave that radiates out that information and calls specifically to the denizen out there that matches the denizen in here that needs to be healed. So definitely willingness is a big piece of the puzzle.
That's a good reminder. Thank you. It's all that process of discernment, isn't it?
It is, and I had a really powerful look at that years ago. I used to keynote at a conference called Global Sciences, and you've probably heard me speak about this. I do it every once in a while, and Marcel Vogel showed up with his Delaware camera and showed us the pictures. I mean, that was like a eureka moment for me. I mean, my background was in physics. I talked in terms of energy. I was teaching this work, but having those pictures where you could literally see, with this particular camera that could measure frequency, you could see the high energy waves leaving the mind when you think a thought. I mean, that's just, that adds a whole other level to it, and recognizing that, by definition, everything is energy, and by definition, energy is motion. Anything that's in motion creates an energy wave and is going to tend to draw to it whatever is like itself. And so definitely the willingness to embrace what moves and comes is a whole other level of willingness and a skill to be developed. And of course, then holding the space for whatever moves.
Right. That's interesting you say that, because I was listening to some talks on mindvalley.com or whatever it's called, a lot of spiritual work going on there. And the lady that I was listening to on her talk was talking about this particular book, and I don't remember what the name of it was, where the gentleman who wrote it had an energy scale. And he was saying that love is like 100% of this energy scale, and then down, maybe you know about it, 0 on the bottom, and that anger was a higher level than fear. And I went, I don't get it.
You were coming up the ladder,
Right. Right, and now I get it, because one of my big things was hopelessness, or is that I'm working through, is hopelessness and helplessness, and what's the use, and futility. It doesn't work. I'll never be perfect, and all this stuff is now bubbling up. But now what's coming out is hostility, as well as the fear. So it's like I feel like I'm climbing this ladder or something. And then I went, now I understand what they're talking about. So I not only deal with my fear and my loss and my grief and my hopelessness and my helplessness, but now we get to deal with stuff that I couldn't have dealt with before. So I appreciate all of it. Strength to strength.
Strength to strength. Here a little, there a little. And with stammering lips and another tongue, does the Creator instruct us? And actually that means with stammering ears and the unwillingness to listen, the Creator has to break through. I'm familiar with something you might want to do, thinking about that, and his name isn't coming to mind. It's a short name, 4 letters, I think, the fellow who wrote that book on levels of energy. But one of the things you might want to do is go to our website, go to whyagain.org, and then click on the Khabour's manuscript. We've got all 515 pages of the manuscript there. It's beautiful, but beyond that, you might want to just flip through in a quiet space, like a meditation, those pages. There was a group out in California working with his work. Again, his name's not coming to mind, but they measured the Khabour's manuscript, and on the scale of, I believe it was a scale of 1 to 100, the Khabourists measured the highest of anything they'd ever measured, and it was something like 98.
Frederick Dodson.
Now, is that Khabour's manuscript the whole New Testament, or is it without John and?
It's the whole Eastern. It's the whole Eastern canon of the New Testament. Jeannie, did you come up with his name? You probably did.
Frederick Dodson.
No.
The Levels of Energy is by Frederick Dodson, and Climbing the Levels of Energy Scale is by Frederick Dodson.
Okay. Yeah, there's a different book that was done by an MD, the short name, and he did quite a bit of work, and one of the people that I had studied with me also was in a group in California, and that's when they took the manuscript. And just spending time, I know that when I traveled for about a year with that, and every night I had it in a case under my bed as I was traveling, when I was getting some photography work done with it. And it was, you could feel the energy of it. And when I would open the book in front of a group, people would just gasp. The energy was there. So you might find it interesting to just flip through the pages on the website and just tap into the energy of that manuscript.
Now, that's all in Aramaic, right? So you're just meditating on the energy?
Exactly. Yeah, just the vibration of it.
Now,
remember the Aramaic language, the letters of the Aramaic alphabet, it's the only language on the planet that is based in the physics of the world. The letters of the Aramaic alphabet are 3D shadows. If you took, let's say, the carbon atom and you shone a light through it, the shadow, the 3D shadow that it would cast would be one of the letters of the Aramaic alphabet. So each letter is a 3D shadow of the atomic structure of the universe. And so, yeah, I know you wouldn't be able to read it. I can't read it either, but you might just spend some time with that. And I don't know if you've got the book Enlightenment, but that's what we've published so far from it. And it has the first century dictionary and such. You know, it might be something you might want to get a hold of and spend some time with those.
Now, I bought that book
words
from you, and I was wondering if it's still the same price, because I'd like to order about 2 copies, which I'll do privately with you for
Sure.
a couple of friends of mine. And Hebrew does not have that same. Is Hebrew
No.
also energetic? No, so their letters are different, and Arabic, their letters are different.
The Arabic is different. The Hebrew letters are different, but modern Hebrew, as I understand it, uses Aramaic characters. I'm not
cool.
fully conversant with it, but as I understand it today, that's the characters that are used. But Hebrew is a daughter language to the Aramaic.
Yeah.
And yes,
Arabic
it's still on,
is
it's
much
just
more
on the catalog
removed,
in the.
Right. So Arabic is much more removed than Hebrew from the Aramaic.
Arabic is a different structured language, yes.
Okay.
And
right.
interestingly, the Muslim faith comes out of a text that was originally written in Aramaic, as does the Christian faith.
Okay, cool.
As does
now,
the
Hebrew.
Abrahamic, all Abrahamic religions.
Yeah. Right. Now, I want these sent directly to these people rather than coming to me. So does the website tell me? No, I don't want to do it by website. I'd rather write a check for you.
Yeah, if you want to do that and just include the addresses with it, we'll send it out as soon as we get it.
Okay. And is that
and the shipping would be
$25?
It's $25, and then the shipping on those, Jeannie, would be they'd ship
About
separately
8.
if they wanted 2 different people. 8 each, so it'd be
Yeah.
$25, $50,
Yeah.
$64.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll get it taken care of,
I
and the
might do it
show's
one
going
at
to
a
cut us off
time,
any
but,
second.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
however it
Blessings.
fits. All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Well, thank you, everybody,
Bye-bye.
for joining us, and create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye.